Let me turn to one issue that is closer to my heart, Professor. I am a student of Pan-Africanism. My views are influenced and shaped by Pan-Africanists like Kwame Nkrumah, Nelson Mandela, Thomas Sankara, Julius Nyerere, Dr. Kenneth Kaunda, who was our founding president, our founding father in Zambia, Steve Biko, and many others. I've had read enough literature on different ideologies and have fallen in love with the idea of Africans espousing their own. As Africans, our existence revolves around three influences: traditional norms, modernity, and religion. Professor Lumumba, I wish to bring to your attention that while Black theology challenges religion in its present form, I wish to focus on modernity and tradition. It is clear that our African tradition is under heavy pressure from modernity. Many societies in Africa have thrown on the window their respective norms in preference to modernity as conveyed by the West. That is why many African leaders are globetrotting in search for solutions of their countries in the West, forgetting that African challenges can only be sorted out by Africans themselves. Professor, permit me to take you back to what our former late Republican president had to say, Dr. Frederick Jacob Titus Chiluba. The West look at African countries to identify their puppets, to divide nations, and identify genuine nationalists and Pan-Africanists whom they must attack. President Chiluba had to put it further that once you see an African leader being extolled by Western elements, know that there is some sinister cooking against the people of that nation where such leaders come from. They will come with some of the most sweetened claims of offering financial and material aids, but beyond what the surface suggests, they are nothing but wolves out to cut right on the throat of Africans with their teeth. We have among African leaders elements that are Western puppets. They gain power with the help of the West. The relationship between such is of father-son kind of arrangement. When the African countries face challenges, they go to their fatherly Westerner to beg for financial crumbs. Yet the bullying father figure makes his wealth from the very African countries through stealing its resources. These Western elements thrive where there is confusion. The wars and instability we see in many African countries is a direct consequence of Western forces. We fight among ourselves and are busy stealing from us, Professor. Comrades here and abroad, we must never believe in leaders who are puppets to the West. They are sellouts. We must remove such Western puppets because they're embarrassing us to our ancestors who think we are cowards. Professor, permit me to report further. We are prepared to walk in the footsteps of past African heroes who fought against imperials. We are prepared to fight against modern imperialism that hides in financial bailouts and aid to African countries. And as we commit to wage war against ideals that destroy Pan-Africanism, we are aware of the fact our comfort is not compatible with our cause. These are things we will sacrifice to ensure that we do not betray those that fought hard for our own sovereignty. I'm hereby waging a crusade against the unwritten West-based school of thought and replace it with an Afrocentric or even a Zamcentric maxim. I am against an attempt by the Western to alter Africanism by forcing onto us cultures which conflict human nature, such as gay marriages. I want to put it out that I have great respect for former Republican President of Zambia, for standing firm against these Western values when he refused to allow such unholy practices as gay marriages in Zambia. President Lungu's stance may have cost him so much, but it has earned him dignity, admiration in the eyes of true Pan-African champions. I want to also pay growing respect to the former president for conceding defeat and peacefully handing over after the loss of the 12th of August election. In the same breath, permit me to congratulate President Hakainde Hichilema for his victory in the previous elections. Professor, my country that I'm speaking on behalf of is indeed a shining example of democracy in Africa and the world at large. Professor, you are being hosted in a country that had denied you entry in the previous regime, but this shows you how peaceful this country is, how accommodative we are. Professor, permit me to acknowledge that the CEO of Eden University is a youth like myself. This is a signal, it's a message that we, the young people, are now in charge of our own affairs. I want to thank Eden University for this wonderful program where ideas are shared. Allow me to thank the CEO, extremely the CEO, and his team, because we're young people and we should uplift one another. May God bless Zambia and may God bless Africa. I thank you.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, we are live now on ZNBC TV. Viewers at home would like to welcome you to the Eden University Public Lecture. The guest speaker is already seated. And now please allow me to recognize the presence of Honorable Felix Mutati, the Assistant Secretary General for COMESA, Ambassador Mrs. Chiluket, and the FAS President, Mr. Andrew Kambanga, and the other FAS officials. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I'd like to call upon the Vice Chancellor, Professor Mutuku Mutinga, to introduce the CEO of Eden University. Round of applause, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. Guest of honor, it's now my single honor and pleasure to call upon the Chief Executive Officer and the President of Eden University, Honorable Kelvin Kaunda, to come forth and invite our guest speaker, Honorable Kaunda.
Thank you, Professor Mtukumtinga. He has a very kind way of introducing human beings. The Chancellor of Eden University, Professor Robert Sepel, the Council Chairperson of Eden University, Honorable Nandu Peter Magande, the Honorable Minister, I'm so sorry, Honorable Minister, the Honorable Minister of Science and Technology, Honorable Felix Mutati, the Council members present, the FAS President, the Deputy Vice Chancellor for Eden University, Professor Faxon Goma, the Deputy Secretary General from COMESA. In the interest of time, allow me simply to say, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. As a university, we hold the view that every advantage of yesterday is judged in the light of the final issue. It gladdens my heart, therefore, tonight, that which was conceived some 2 years ago under the theme Chinese investment in Africa and global geodynamics is now a perfect reality. We have waited. We have waited again and again and again, hoping and waiting that one day the deal will be fair. I have a report to give to you, Honorable Minister, that the holding of this historical public lecture tonight attests one thing among many other things, that finally the deal where the citizens can freely express themselves is here. Congratulations to the great people of this great country in prospect. Congratulations, Honorable Minister. Congratulations to the government of His Excellency, who, by virtue, by mere temptation, I'm tempted to address him as Dr. Hakainde Sami Hichilema. Honorable Minister, I am mindful that in a multitude of words, sin is not absent. It remains there for me to thank our dear audience tonight. I am aware that some of you have traversed the width and the length of our country just to be able to join us tonight. On behalf of Eden University, which is a great university in prospect, I want to say to Atotela, Zikomo, Twalumba Kapati, Asante Sana. Thank you to all of you, individually and collectively, for supporting the cause of this university. It is our sincere hope that all of us will have a great night together, and may God literally bless you. It is now my singular honor and privilege to invite the Deputy Vice Chancellor, Professor Faxon Goma, to give us a brief resume of our guest speaker tonight. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Our guest of honor, our guest speaker, may I write on the protocol that has already been put out by our public relations manager. Ladies and gentlemen, may I present to you Professor Patrick Locke Otieno Lumumba. Several of you have met him on the social media, and so he needs very little introduction. But for us, it's a privilege to have him here in person this evening. Professor Lumumba, welcome to Lusaka, welcome to Zambia. Professor Lumumba is very much one of us, a son of Africa, born on 17th July 1962 and raised in Usenge, a small village on the shores of Lake Victoria in Kenya. He was named after an African hero of that time, Patrick Emery Lumumba. Like any other ordinary boy, at that time, he started his elementary education in his ancestral village, Usenge, in 1969. Now, this year is very, very important. Thank you very much. And so it ends here, because the man will give the rest of his accolades. Thank you very much, Professor Lumumba. Welcome.
Thank you. In fact, I'd said, I do not know how many times you go to meetings and they keep on going on and on and on in circumstances where the audience can, of their own motion, find out who you are if they needed to be. And what I have done does appear rude, but I think it is necessary rudeness. so that we know that the world of information is available there. If people want information about me, they'll find it. And therefore, let us stick to the agenda of this evening. Let me start by recognizing the government ministers here present, the senior administrators of Eden University, the invited guests who are present in this assembly, for giving me the opportunity to be present with you this evening. And I'll ask, because as a young student, I was taught about Mlungushi and the great role that was played at that time by the late Dr. Kenneth David Kaunda, Julius Kambarage Nyerere of Tanzania, and Apollo Milton Obote of Uganda about Mulungushi, and coming at a time when this country has lost one of the last icons of the struggle for independence, that you grant me the favor of standing up and for 1 minute remembering Kenneth David Kaunda. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been asked to talk about the state of democracy in Zambia. And this invitation comes at a time when Zambia has gone through an electoral process which has produced its 7th president since she regained her independence. Permit me, therefore, at the very outset, to congratulate President Hakainde Hichilema on his election. Permit me also in the same breath to recognize the former President Eja Chagwalungu for doing what many African leaders must be strongly persuaded to do, to concede defeat when they lose elections. You may take it for granted, but there are many countries in this continent where electoral processes give birth to chaos and conflict. Permit me also to congratulate all the men and women who have been elected into various positions and those who are being appointed to serve in the administration of President Hakainde Hichilema. These are honeymoon days, but I want to remind you at the very outset that the patience of the citizens are normally very short, and the honeymoon days are even shorter. I wish you God's grace as you discharge your function. When one is invited to talk about democracy in Africa, one must contextualize one's assessment of democracy. One must quickly remind oneself that today, several years after 55 odd African countries regained their independence from their erstwhile colonizers, Africa still remains a continent that is defined by others. We remain a continent which European powers define casually as Francophone to mean former French colonies, casually as Anglophone to mean former British colonies, Lusophone casually to mean former Portuguese colonies. The Italians may not have a phone for themselves, but I believe they do in their guarded moments. The Belgians may be shy, but I believe they do. The latter-day occupants and describers of Africa, whether from the West or from the East, in their quiet moments and the inner sanctums of their machinations, must have a way of defining and denigrating us. That is our continent. Even when we are told about democracy, we are tested on standards that are external to us. When we hold our elections, they are not deemed to be complete until we have a scorecard. And those scorecards will be from the European Union, from the Commonwealth, or some other erstwhile colonizers and the organization that they have created over the years. And it is only when they say that we have passed the litmus test that we are deemed to be democratic. That is the Africa that I'm talking about. The Africa that you have invited me to talk about and to contextualize within Zambia is one that has a painful history and is not perhaps the right occasion to go into the annals of history. But it would be remiss on my part, and indeed on the part of anybody who stood on a podium such as this, not to remember that this continent was enslaved and that our erstwhile enslavers are the ones who now pontificate to us. It would be remiss on my part not to say that those enslavers turned colonizers ran roughshod over us, and that before they ran roughshod over us, they sat somewhere in Berlin, in Germany in 1884, and without any care, they parceled us into spheres of influence, and they dehumanized us. They named our countries as they willed, and even rivers which had long sustained our ancestors, they gave names. So that even today, when I traverse the land of Zambia, as indeed other parts of Africa, I still find lakes called Victoria in honor of a British monarch. I still find a fall called Victoria Falls, not Mosi Otunya. I still find a town called Livingston. I look forward to the day, I hope it will be during the administration of Hakainde Hichilema, that those names will be changed. And they did not stop there. After they had parceled us out, they took away our artifacts and they took them to European museums and they are still there. And after they had finished and they were pushed out by our founding fathers in the 1940s, running through the 1950s, we decided that we were not going to be colonized. And I can hear through the vicissitudes of time the immortal words of Ghana's Kwame Nkrumah that we as Africans would prefer to live in freedom rather than to live in servitude. And there was not only Kwame Nkrumah. Here in Zambia, you'll remember the selfless efforts of Kenneth David Kaunda. You will remember great Africans such as Modibo Keita in Mali, Ahmed Ben Bella in Algeria, Gamal Abdel Nasser in Egypt, Kambarage Nyerere in Tanzania, Ahmed Sékou Touré in Guinea, Leopold Sédar Senghor in Senegal, Apollo Milton Obote in Uganda, Jomo Kenyatta in Kenya, Haile Selassie in Ethiopia, and much later you will remember Sobukwe in South Africa, Mandela, NATO, Marshall, Nuyoma, and many other stalwarts who stood so very firm. And I remember so very distinctly on the 6th day of March 1957, when the then Gold Coast regained our independence as Ghana, with the Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah as the Prime Minister. And he said then that the freedom of Ghana meant nothing if the rest of Africa was not free. He said famously then that let us seek first the political kingdom and the rest shall be given unto us. We sought and obtained the political kingdom. The rest has been coming in spits and spats. But those words remain as true today as they were when they were spoken. I remember 2 years later in Casablanca, Morocco, the Osagyefo once again reminded his audience, at least those who cared to listen to him, that the imperialists have left. But remember that the imperialists, like the cheetah before it, never changes its spots. He may wear different masks, but he changes not. Kwame may not have been a prophet, but his words have been fulfilled over the years. 3 years later, on the 25th day of May 1963, in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, if possessed, he told those who were present, if we do not unite now, if we do not live with a single government now, if we allow our little countries to be the basis of our organization, then let me tell you, in a few years, a new order will have come into place. The neo-colonial project. It will be more dangerous, more rapacious, more pernicious, and all of us will pay. Once again, he was right. He was even right before he spoke. Because in 1961, the man for whom I am named, Patrice Emery Lumumba, had been assassinated by the Belgians. 2 years later, Sylvanus Olympia of Togo had been assassinated. 3 years later, the Osagie for himself had been taken out via coup d'etat. 1 year later, in 1967, Nnamdi Azikiwe had been taken out, and Abubakar Tafawa Balewa and the Sordona of Sokoto, Ahmadu Bello, had been removed from power. Many followed. Ahmed Ben Bella followed. Modibo Keita followed. And those who remained, it was not for want of effort on the part of the erstwhile colonizers. Coup d'etats became as frequent as breakfast in Africa. That is the Africa that you are asking me to talk about. The French appeared to leave, but they did not leave. They were always there. They formed an organization of former French-speaking countries. The British appeared to leave, but they did not leave. They formed the Commonwealth of Nations, of equal nations, but whose permanent head is the British monarch. Equal nations. The Portuguese stayed a little longer. And you here in South Africa knew that the apartheid regime stayed even longer. And you knew that it took bombings here in Lusaka for Zimbabwe to be freed and for Namibia to be freed. That is the Africa that you've invited me to talk about. That Africa is an Africa that continues to suffer. That is not to say that there are no good things that are coming out of her. Remember that the post-colonial African nation is not old. Ghana only regained our independence in 1957. That is slightly over 60 years ago. But look at how our continent, our Africa, continues to be a laboratory for all manner of experiments. I remember in the 1960s, the leaders of the day said, we cannot afford the luxury of multi-party states. And they had their arguments and they had their detractors. Then Europe and America came and told us democracy equals to multi-partyism, equals to periodic elections, equals to free civil society, equals to all the things that they had conceived in Europe and America. And we swallowed it line, hook, and sinker. Democracy was defined for us. We went through that phase, and there is nothing with democracy. Democracy is innocent. But the thing that is not innocent is the dishonesty of those who want to continue to rape and abuse Africa. So that Mother Africa that you're asking me to talk about and to test and judge Zambia against, what is our state as I speak today? What is our state about our Africa? The Africa about which the Osagie said, seek ye first the political kingdom, and the rest shall be given unto you. What was the rest that was to be given unto us? We were to feed ourselves. Question that I want to put on the table to you all, are we feeding ourselves? We were to eliminate ignorance, and we have many universities today. Have we eliminated ignorance? We were to heal ourselves by building hostels. I'm speaking at the time of a pandemic, and we are receiving all manner of vaccines. Moderna, AstraZeneca, Sinopharm. They are coming in droves, but if they removed the label, would we know the difference between Moderna and AstraZeneca? Or we simply consume them because we are told they are? That is my Africa. My Africa that was supposed to take care of herself, to build her roads. She has produced engineers to build her airports, to do all the things, because that is what independence meant, to run our airlines. My Africa, the Africa that you've invited me to talk about this evening, let us take a health check of my Africa. Look at her today as I speak. Is she healthy? Would Kenneth David Kaunda, listening to her pulse,
are available at Eden University main campus and at the Great East Road campus. For more details, please call 0977 302102 or 0955 000 367 or 0979 172078. Eden University, your dream university. On the 25th of September 2021, at the Mulungushi International Conference Center, Eden University presents a public lecture with the topic of discussion, Is Zambia
what have you done to me? Particularly those of us who have had the advantage of education. When we are given the opportunity to serve Mother Africa, we milk her. We bleed her, we steal from her, and what we take from her, we take to Europe, we take to Dubai. When we are given the opportunity to serve in different capacities as our ministers for health, we say all the beautiful things about the local hospitals. But even as much as a cough takes us out to Germany, we who are presiding over our ministries of health, we say there is something called free education, but we dare not take our children to those free education things that we preside over. We want to build roads, and we have faculties of engineers, complete with PhDs and professors, but we go to China to bring a diploma holder to tell us how to build roads. Ali Mazrui was right. We consume what we do not produce and produce what we do not consume. Mother Africa is asking us awkward questions. And we must answer those questions for this generation and generations yet to be born. It cannot be right that we have a continent that has all the resources in the world, but when we are called to conferences where the human race is discussing important things, we are not there. And if we are not there, and I dare you watch the UN General Assembly when an African leader is speaking, it is empty. When we are invited to the G20, you never see the African leader after the photo opportunity. When they have the G7, they select a few for the photo opportunity, and thereafter they are disappeared. Amongst the Committee of Nations, we are not respected. These are awkward and painful things to talk about. 1 week ago, I had the misfortune of listening to a French minister speaking in Bamako, Mali. She was a lady, and she was annoyed that the Malians were reported to have entered into an agreement with a Russian mercenary group called the Wagner, who I'm told have operated in Madagascar and in Central African Republic, and they say the French will not allow it. I thought Mali was an independent state. But when she spoke as if she was a school head mistress dressing down a schoolboy. And what disappointed me most, that even some Malians were celebrating that they preferred the Russians to the French, saying that one slave master is better than the other. Those are the depths to which we have sunk as a people, even as we talk about democracy. So, fellow Africans, beyond the sorrows and lamentations, what must we do? How can we redeem ourselves? You know, sometimes I allow myself a little imagination and a little melodrama. And I heard the preacherman preach and pray before we started. And he prayed, among other things, that we should speak things that can change Africa. I have no problem with prayer. We must pray because God is omniscient and omnipresent. But this misguided belief by Africans that everything can be prayed into being is misguided. The things that require technology will be earned by technology, not by theology. And the sooner we realize that, the safer we are. The last time I checked, even when Christ was asking or healing people, he told them to do something about it. And the last time that I checked, there is a sense in which there must be effort on our part. Fellow Africans, the time has come that we must exorcise the ghosts of low self-esteem. I know the world is a global village, but if globalization means we are dehumanized, then to hell with globalization. If globalization means that the Chinese must come into Africa and take everything, then to hell with globalization. If globalization means that the Americans must come here and tell us the difference between our left and our right hands, then to hell with globalization. We know what our left hand is, and we know what our right hand. So is Zambia democratic. So has Zambia done well. Because amidst all this gloom, sometimes we think that Africa is not doing well. Africa is doing reasonably well, even in the face of those problems. Sometimes Europe behaves as if she is Shangri-La, El Dorado, the land of God. No, she's not. The Europe that we are talking about, during my lifetime, I've seen the Soviet Union break up into little countries. They have their own problems. As I speak to you now, they are fighting in eastern Ukraine, and I've seen the Azerbaijanis and the Armenians fighting. They are not immune. Conflict is universal, so let not your spirit be dumbed as if Africa was the only theater of war. They have their own wars. Even in Asia now, ask them what is happening in Myanmar, ask them what is happening in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, and in all those stands that are to be found in that part of the world. Ask them what is happening there. We are not the only ones who are going through this pain. If you go to Latin America, ask them what is happening in Nicaragua, what is happening in Venezuela, what is happening in Colombia, what is happening in Chile and Argentina and in Brazil. They are also going through the same problems as we are going through. And if you doubt that they don't know how to handle elections, you just have to see the last election that they were handling in the United States. If we had a problem with counting in Africa, so you see how they too had problems of counting. And it did not start there. If you go down a little bush too, and I'll go, even they had difficulties in counting. So it is not as if we are the only ones who have these problems. We have our own problems, and what we are telling ourselves is that the time has come for us to solve our problem. And don't you be cheated that the Arab world has no problems of our own. See what is happening in Syria, see what is happening in Iraq, see what is happening in Yemen. They have their own problems. We can do it. And Africa has a few gems. When I look at Africa, Zambia has demonstrated to the world, not once, not twice. You know, on that day, for historical reasons and for many reasons, which I'll refuse to explain even if I'm asked to, when I saw Kenneth David Kaunda losing the elections, it was painful. But that is not what was great about it. What was great about it is that he conceded defeat. And what was great about it is that historians now record that when they look for accounts that he held, that the match that he held in accounts anywhere in the world was the equivalent of 8,000 United States dollars after 24 years in power. If I was the Catholic Pope, I would have made him Saint Kenneth David Kaunda. And they did not stop there. You had another leader in Chiluba. You have done it 7 times. Then you had Levi Mwanawasa. Then you had Rupia Banda. Then you had Michael Sata. Then you had Edgar Chagwa Lungu. And now you have Hakainde Hichilema. And the last time I checked, none of them has run out of the country. They are here. That is the beauty of it. Zambia is doing well. And it's not only Zambia that is doing well. In Namibia they are doing well. Sam Nujoma is there. Hifikepunye Pohamba is there. And if you go to Botswana, Kwek Masire is there, Ketumile Masire is there, Ian Kama is there, beauty itself in all its splendor. If you go to Angola, I'm happy that the former president is now back home. Whether they'll punish him is another debate, but he is at home. And when I go to Mozambique, I'm happy that Amando Gweboza is at home. And when I look at different countries, I go to Malawi here, being President Mwamutarika is there, President Chakwera is there, whether they'll be punished, and I think if they engage in certain activities that are untoward, even God himself reminds us to punish them in accordance with the law. And I have no problem with that. And if you go to Ghana, you can see something good is happening there. In Senegal, something is good is happening there. In Tanzania, I've seen Nyerere come, I've seen Mwenyi come, I've seen Jakaya come, I've seen Benjamin William Mkapa come, I've seen John Joseph Magufuli come, I've seen Samia Suluhu come. Beauty is in the continent. So that those who think that the continent of Africa is only about chaos, let them be reminded that the continent has things that are happening to her and for her. Our duty is now to redouble our efforts and to make sure that this becomes a tradition. Zambia now finds herself in a very good state. You no longer have to travel out of the country under the pretext of medical problems during an electioneering period in the hope that you will look from outside. You can go to an election tomorrow and in 3 days, you know there'll be changes and there'll be no chaos. That is what democracy is. But the word democracy, somebody told me that we had better look for another word. Not democracy, that we should look for a word called Afrocracy. But I do not want to engage in linguistic adventurism. What I know that in the fullness of time, when Kiswahili becomes the African lingua franca, sooner rather than later, we'll find a word that defines what Africa is. So, fellow Africans, today, I must conclude, because that which has a beginning must end. And you know, I must only conclude in a particular way, the way I started. And when I started, I went through a historical journey. And I remember that great icon of African independence, the Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah, when speaking in 1958 in Accra, Ghana, and when he writes, I speak of freedom, the Osagyefo says, Africa shows me promise, but she also disturbs me. She disturbs me because disunited she remains susceptible to the diabolical machinations of external powers. But she shows promise because if she is united, not the unity of the grave, where there is unanimity without discussion, but the unity where ideas are bounced against one another, then I have no doubt that she can become an important player in the affairs of the world. Today, Africa says that under the aegis of Agenda 2063, she will become a great continent. I hope she will. We must work at it. Today, Africa says that we must break down all the barriers. I too look to those days. I look to the day when during the watch of this administration in Zambia, I will hear freshness of voice from Hakainde Hichilema. I want to hear HH say, and him being recorded by historians, that Zambia no longer requires visas from any African country. I look forward to that day. I look forward to the day when I hear HH say that any African who wants to form a company in this country will not require a work permit. I look forward to that day. I look forward to the day when he will join with his fellow Africans saying that we shall only have a single passport. I look forward to that day. I look forward to the day when he shall participate with others and begin the process of ensuring that we have a single currency in Africa. I look forward to that day. And I look forward to Zambians and Africans liberating themselves, that when work permits are eliminated, that everybody from Africa will congregate in Lusaka. It is not true. Indeed, Lusaka will be opened when it is opened. I look forward to the days when Africans will move, and when I come to Zambia, I'll not be asked, what seeketh thee in Zambia? I look forward to that day. Those days will come, but we must work at it. So permit me to say, I look forward with optimism, saying as I do with the Osagie for Kwame Nkrumah that we must neither look east nor west, but we must look forward. Zambia is a great country, and she must demonstrate that she is a great country. I want you to make your former leaders happy wherever they are. Fred Chiluba, Levi Mwanawasa, and the great Kenneth Kaunda, that when they look down, they are able to see that at this Mulungushi, men and women sat. And those men and women were Africans. And the only thing that they saw and recognized is that our continent must rise again. And that our continent can only rise when men and women unite and say that it must be done, because if it is not done, we are done. Ladies and gentlemen, let us play our part. Let us rise in the knowledge that this continent must never be fair game for the world again. Let us rise in the knowledge that we are the mother continent. Let us rise in the knowledge that Africa must liberate herself economically, culturally, and otherwise. It can be done, and it must be done, and it is you and me that must do it. God bless you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we know you might have a few questions for Professor Lumumba, so we're going to have ushers going round, so you can just jot down your questions, and Professor Lumumba will be able to answer your questions. So while we write down our questions, we're going to have some entertainment from Exile and some poetry from Chris and Dennis.
Right, it is an honor to be here with the inspiring person behind every work that I do concerning poetry. I am really honored, and just allow me to write through the protocols that have been presented. So my poem is titled, My Kind of Zambia. My kind of Zambia is a kind that is kind, the kind that embraces our kind. It smiles at pain and chooses unity, making division be jealousy. It speaks Tonga in Chewa, it dances Makishi in Gamba, it sings Lozi in a Mambwe way. My kind of Zambia's democracy does not die. It lives and breathes peace, a soothing wind that ensures peaceful transitions of governments. Our people speak with one voice, not that of bullets, but that of ballots. We use voting as a weapon when firing. Zambia yomwendi mafuna, ndi Zambia ogoma mtima, yemwendi malota, yemema mwetulila kuwawa, ndi kusanga chikondi mugwirizano, kupanga kugawa nsanje, imalankula za chitonga mujewa, imaimba makishi mwanjila yadi mambo emaye. Kind of Zambia is a kind that is kind, the kind that embraces our kind. My kind of Zambia has love for the land like we are all farmers, so we tell the world. We tell those in the diaspora that Zambia is a green pasture and we can harvest our dreams here. It is a spring where we must bound and rebound back. It is the one that does not give us sleeping pills so we can realize our dreams. It turns beautiful youths into turbines, driving the light of hope in our motherland. My kind of Zambia is the one with proud patriots. Patriotism is a seed we must plant and let it be permanent in firmaments, and like its home is in our skin. So every day we must sense the touch of patriotism, for Zambia is a place full of life where our skeleton can gather back its flesh fresh. My kind of Zambia is the one that closes eyes not to employ the name on the NRC but the skill, not to employ the name on the NRC but the skill. It's beauty, vividly displayed on the Mosotunya, its flamboyance, caressing and cuddling the world. Zambia yomwendi mafuna, ilindi mitundu 72, yolankula chilankulo chimodzi mugwirizano, mene mondiye kunyada kwatu ngatini kango tifolimba pamodzi. Zambia yomwendi mafuna, ilindi chikondi ndikumvana, bulangeti yofotokoza kusiyana kwandale zatu, tonsefe timamba kutenda ngakale pamene zikulupiliro zatu zitakala zosiyana zofanana. Timalola mugwirizano kutamangisa nkondo ngatimbendela yatuma. Kind of Zambia is a kind that is kind, the kind that embraces our kind. My kind of Zambia has love and understanding, a blanket covering our political differences. We all feel the warmth even when our beliefs are divergently similar. We let unity where our differences like the green flag. My kind of Zambia is a kind that is kind. My kind of Zambia allows not tribalism to give birth. She is barren, however. If ever she gives birth, it is the only time I will advise her to get abortion pills. Tribalism must not give birth. She is barren. Tribalism must not give birth. She is barren. We are the sons of the soil, so we shine in spite of the dust. My kind of Zambia is a kind that is kind, the kind that embraces our kind. My kind of Zambia.
The title of the poem is Tell Them. Africa cries for her child. History. His story, her story, our story. History will one day have its say. It will not be the kind of history that London, New York, Washington, D.C., Paris, all the United Nations will teach. But in their streets, books, magazines, each shall find its way. Yes, each shall find its way. On their white walls we shall paint our identity. The day will come when history will speak. Africa will teach and write her own history. She will speak of the streams of the Zambezi, of sorrow pouring into the Indian Ocean. When they speak of the tears of the Nile and write about the blood staining our soil, we will sing of the peace and liberties of our land. Nkosi sikelele Africa. Africa is our own motherland, fashioned with and blessed by God's good hands. Let us, all her people, join as one, brothers under the sun. Oh, one, strong and free. Go home.
Go home and tell everyone we are not black. Remind them that black is just the absence of life and being primitive is the supreme law. This is not the burden. Tell them that just because they call us Negroes, it does not necessarily mean we should go under their knees. Negroes, we are not a lesser race, no children of the lesser God. Tell them about our origin. Twali Luba. We have lost our way. Twali Luba. We were once part and parcel of the mighty Luba kingdom. We were once a beautiful flower blossoming at the heart of Africa, until one greedy king adopted the heart of its garden. Twali Luba. Tell them Wakanda has nothing to do with us and has no meaning. We are not a work of fiction, we are real. I mean, what kind of nonsense is that? Tell them about Kenneth Kaunda, Jomo Kenyatta, Kwame Nkrumah, Patrice Lumumba, to mention but a few. Tell them about the Emperor Haile Selassie. Tell them about Shaka and his mighty kingdom. Tell them that up to date, it is only the Ngonis that manage to put still the sun for hours until they cross the Zambezi River. Tell them about the Katanga and the Bantu. Tell them about Ubuntu. Tell them about us, because us is all there is about us, and us is not all there is about us. Yes, I do agree that my sisters are a fine work of art. Melanin popping into body parts, they are more than their curves. You see, these ladies are well cultured. Tell them that our fathers' responsibilities reign all over our communities. We have learned to freely commune with our identities. Born in this dark continent, so my skin nourishes these stories. Tell them about Africa, and that is the history of glory, honor, and dignity. Africa must unite. Tell them.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are now going to have entertainment from one of Zambia's musical legends, Mr. Exile, or some of you may know him by his new name, Israel. Ladies and gentlemen, please let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you so much, Professor Lumumba. It's an honor, sir, to perform in front of you. I'm a big fan. How's everybody doing tonight? We loosen up a bit, eh? Mr. DJ, let's go. Capella first time. Kufaya kwandi kutimbe prenode. Deti mwekele pano twafika baby. Nganaria nganale faya numba. Ati? Ishe, are you ready? Good evening, sir. Are we ready, Mr. DJ, or we keep singing a cappella? We keep singing a cappella, eh? Oh, baby, landamune, iwe kaladi la fielionse, amuna kupaka panoziko ewa.
Thank you for that lovely performance, Exile/Israel. Round of applause for him, please. We would also like to recognize the presence of the UPND National Youth Chairperson, Mr. Liswan Niso. Welcome and thank you for joining us. Okay, I think Professor Patrick Lodge Otieno Lumumba is ready to answer our questions, so I invite him over.
Thank you. Thank you. I've received quite a number of questions, which I've summarized into 6 questions. I think all the papers actually ask 6 questions. Question number 1, it relates to what is a democracy. The term democracy, in my understanding, means the creation of a governmental system in which the people are involved in determining who are going to run their affairs. If that is what democracy means, it cannot be true that there is a one-size-fits-all democracy. The West has told us that in order to have a democratic dispensation, you must have something called a political party And in the West, they talk of one being on the left or one being on the right. I know many countries, including my own, where certain individuals within a space of 10 years have belonged to 12 political parties. Now, if you talk about the parties being on the left or the right, that one tells me that those fellows simply create these bodies which are called political parties for the purpose of gaining office. Nana Kobina Nketia, who is himself a traditional ruler and a professor of political science at the University of Cape Coast, has written a book which I commend to all of us, The Role of Culture in Political Development, the Ghanaian Paradigm. I believe that as long as the litmus test is people participation, periodic processes where you can determine who your leaders are, it is possible to have democratic processes which do not ape Western practices. As to how that will happen, each country and each unit must determine that on the basis of its own realities. I've seen in Ghana, for example, a place that is created for traditional rulers in the context of what is described as a democracy. I believe here in Zambia, you also have a place for traditional rulers. I've seen that in South Africa. This is a debate that Africa must now begin to engage in, because if we don't, we are going to be told to engage in processes which we do not understand, and during every election cycle, it is a cutthroat competition and throats are actually cut. And we have seen that in a number of African countries, and therefore I think I'm inviting a debate on this particular issue and saying that there is no one size fits all. Recently, I was in a place in the United States, and this is in the state of Minnesota. Their budget for the year was 78 billion United States dollars. 78. That is their budget. That is not their GDP. And the members of their administration were part-timers. In Africa, we have made politics an industry. But that is part of the problem, that one of the shortest cuts to political wealth, to wealth in Africa, is to be a politician. As long as that is the case, we are always going to have problems. Because once you become a cabinet minister in your typical African state, you are a multi-millionaire immediately. Until the day we check that, we are not going to realize our potential. There are things to borrow from a number of countries. Ask yourselves what is happening in countries such as Finland, such as Denmark, such as the Netherlands, where you have cabinet ministers riding bicycles to office. It is a mortal sin if you are a cabinet minister in Africa to drive in a small car. It is a mortal sin. So these are the things that we've got to deal with. Issue question number 2 is about value addition. Right now, many African countries, in fact, all African countries are laboring under COVID. And many African countries are going to go into what is rebasing their economies. In other words, they are going, well, I'm not an economist, but I'm curious enough to speak with some educated comments on this particular subject. Governments are going to try and create the impression that economies are growing. No African economy is going to grow in the manner that is desired for the next 5 years. Not under COVID. That being the case, it means that governments will have to be frugal. It means that resources must be utilized efficiently. And the question that I'm answering here is value addition. So that Zambia will not afford the luxury of looking at the Zambian market. Zambia will look at the SADC market and what it has competitive advantage in within the SADC market. And if it does that, then it's talking about a market of nearly 100 million plus, not the 19 million that is your population. And that will require that there is value addition. If it is in agriculture, what thing are you putting in that is giving you better value? How are you dealing with your mining sector? Are you allowing them to come in and take it as raw as it is without value addition? When they bring in their technology, what is the technology transfer? These are the issues that I think are going to be very important. And this administration comes at a very difficult time, at a time when it has promised jobs and it's not going to be easy to create jobs, at a time when the tax base is growing thinner. What are you going to do? And very quickly, as I said at the very outset, the population is going to become impatient. You may have promised free education. When you begin to graph, the Honorable Minister is here, when you begin to look at the books, you will discover that what you desire in your hearts of hearts may not be achievable within the time that you are. And the opposition is not going to wait to say, no, we know it's COVID. They are going to say, we told you they can't do it. They were just populists. They are going to say that sooner rather than later, if they haven't started saying it already. And these are realities that you are going to have to grapple with. And it's going to take great leadership. In fact, this is the moment when great leadership is going to be evident and on how you leverage on this. And which brings me to the third question. The third question, how do we move towards, how do we leverage on the diaspora? Look at the Zambian diaspora and how much it brings. And the Zambian diaspora is to be found in Europe, is to be found in America, is to be found in different parts of the world. I believe that the government, and if I was the president, one of the things that I would do, the diaspora unit would be in my office. It would be in my office deliberately to ensure that I take care of the resources that they are able to master so that they come into chosen sectors. Because they have resources, they have access to credit, which credit can then be deployed for the benefit of the people. The African diaspora and the Zambian diaspora, and many of you know, some of them are in very good opportunities in the United States of America, in Europe and America and Asia, and even within the continent of Africa. The diaspora must be encouraged to come into the continent and ensure that they contribute in a meaningful way. And I think they can if they are encouraged. In other words, if I am from the diaspora and I come here and it takes me 2 weeks to meet a government minister, then it's a waste of my time. I can go elsewhere. And the country government ministers should not go benchmarking to Europe. Go to Rwanda and see how it can be done. You can get a company registered in Rwanda in 3 hours. In 3 hours, in Africa, here in Africa, in Rwanda. I've done it before. And it can happen. Once you do that, then people just come. And I believe that you have the passion, you have the drive, the country is behind you. I was asked what I think the administration of President HH should do. And I think that they are riding on the crest of optimism. They are riding on that crest, but that crest only remains there. It's like cruise. When you are flying from Harare to Lusaka, you cruise for a very short time, then you begin descending. And therefore it is very important to capture the spirit at the right moment. And I believe that universities must also be utilized. Universities are critical. Governments are not going to go anywhere if they don't put money in research and development, which is answering the fifth question about COVID, for example. You'll remember when COVID came about, one of the very first institutes to come up with something was the Malagasy Institute of Applied Science, COVID Organic. You remember that. Then you remember the Louis Pasteur Institute in Dakar, Senegal, which came up with rapid testing kits. Governments, African governments said nothing. The AU said nothing. I looked to my friend Dr. Nkenga's son on this Center for Disease Control in the AU. Nothing. They are simply waiting to parrot what is being said by the World Health Organization. I'm answering the fifth question about the AU. There is a multiplicity of bodies in Africa, all of which are moving from workshop to seminar to webinar. We must stop this. With this webinarization is not going to take Africa anywhere. In fact, I hold the view that we have held so many workshops, so many meetings, so many of these things, that there should be a moratorium for 2 years, during which we implement all the things we have been saying. And it can be done. If you look at COMESA now, and His Excellency the Ambassador is here. If you look at the achievement of COMESA on a scale of 1 to 10, I would be surprised if it has achieved 4. I would be, and I'm saying this because we've got to speak painful truths to each other. We no velvet gloves. We've been too nice to each other for too long. That's why we are not achieving. And the reason is they are under-resourced. The ambassador may want to do all the work. SADC promised that they would, by now, there should be a single currency in the SADC region. There should be a single currency in the ECOWAS region. There should be a single currency in the East African region. There should be a single currency in the Maghreb. There should be a single currency in CFA region. None. And I can promise you that if we don't do that, you imagine, I fly from Zimbabwe to Ghana, no internet connectivity. In this day and age, and you are going to transact. Meanwhile, an American has flown from New York to Los Angeles, only one phone call, number 1. In Africa, we have 33 of them. I fly for 55 minutes, I'm with Kwacha. Malawian Kwacha, Zambian Kwacha, Medical, Pula. You can't operate. You can't operate. So one would imagine, and these things can be done. Just before I came here, I was listening to President Paul Kagame speak in Cabo Delgado, where he has sent 1,000 troops. That is leadership. There's a problem in Africa, and I offer, and I'm there on the ground. In other words, these things can be done. I listened to President HH speaking at the UN. That rhetoric must now be matched with action. And if it is, then in addition to prayers, not prayers alone, in addition, if we just pray and then it will not happen. And all of us, this idea that our leaders are some kind of will deliver, no, that will not happen. History has demonstrated not once, not twice, all of us are susceptible to abuse power. All of us. And therefore democracy is guarded by eternal vigilance. I can imagine the current president. Allow me a little imagination, Honorable Minister, that's because I leave on Monday anyway. So I'm allowed a little imagination. I can imagine that your administration, your party has this blueprint and is all good. You possibly want to have a lean, mean government, but somebody emerges from somewhere and say, you know, we have been in this thing together, you have only 26 minutes, add another one. And then you say, which one? He says, your ministry, science and technology. You say, let's slice technology, and we give it to somebody else. Then somebody comes by, before you know it, you have 50 ministries. Because you want to please people. So it requires resolute. You will annoy some, you will harm some, and all is in the best interest of the country. It's the famous St. John who said, nobody can govern guiltlessly. We'll all make mistakes, but we must not persist in our stupidity. And I think that is what we must not do. I hold the view, to conclude the last question, I think is somebody that asked about, this is the last question. No, it's not that one. It's somebody that asked, what are some of the characteristics of, or he talks about populism and electioneering. And I must say that elections are in and of themselves an opportunity to market your ideas in a laboratory situation. When you get into the arena, then you discover that the laboratory is quite different. There are too many variables outside of the laboratory. And you begin to discover that they are civil servants. They are civil servants who can wait you out. I'm told that what the Afghans normally tell people who invade the Afghanistan, they say, you have the watch, but we have the time. There are also civil servants who say, you have 5 years, but we are permanent and pensionable. And therefore they wait for you to do your things. And what I must say, therefore, is that all these things are doable. It is not for the faint-hearted. And all of us must try to play our part, whatever it is, in our own small way. And if we do, then we will make our country great. You know, I used to, the young honorable member of parliament who spoke before me, I hope he is still with us. If he is not, there was a time, the Chinese have a saying where they say, when you have a problem, ask the young, they know everything. It is not meant to be a compliment. It simply says that they think they know everything. The real society is composed of young and old people. That is the real society. And I hold the view that leadership is intergenerational. And the young must learn from the old, but the old must also know when to leave. There are some fellows who think, he says that God has allowed him to stay. Which God? God tells Moses to leave and allow Joshua to take charge. So you've got to, if you are not a leader unless you mentor people. And mentorship, I always tell my young people that you are not a leader if you cannot show me at least 10 young men and women who are better than you. That is what leadership is all about. If you want to be the only dancer on the floor, then you are not a leader. You are destroying people. So you must ensure that when you get into any position of influence, then you use that position to mentor young men and women. And the youth must remember that youthhood is not a permanent state. You are youth today, and a few years later you are not a youth. So so your period of youthhood, if you may, is very short. Youthhood is not like being man and a woman. Man and a woman, once you are man, you are man. At least the last time I checked. And once you are woman, you are woman. So let us be very slow in having this very blanket, general negative view about people because of their age. I know young people whose minds are like Methuselah in the Bible. And I also know old people whose minds are as fresh as if they were 18 and 25. Let us deploy that intellectual firepower for the sake of our nation. And if the balance is good and right, then it can be done. And Nelson Mandela was very right, particularly, that you cannot, in all consideration, tie down the bulk of your population. Africa is the youngest continent today. The average age is about 18. Some say it is even 16. And you only have to drive, even as you go into rural Zambia and rural Africa, see the number of young people, which means that those young men and women must be taken care of. And we must use this youth dividend to our advantage. So ladies and gentlemen, it can never be all answered at once. And as I grow old and I want to delude myself wiser, I now believe that some of the things I say do not necessarily represent the truth. They represent my view of those things. You may find favor with some of the things that I say. Some of them may be useful in making you think a little differently about, and that is the beauty of things which challenge your own and they make you improve. So don't say he came there and pontificated as if he was Plato himself. I'm not. Thank you. Have a good
Another round of applause, please. Thank you so much, Professor Lumumba. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd also like to recognize the presence of our partners, Prime TV and Movie TV, who've been with us from the beginning of the program. Thank you for being with us. And without further ado, I would like to welcome our guest of honor, the Honorable Minister of Justice, Honorable Hainde Mulambo, to give a vote of thanks. Round of applause, please.
Established. Honorable Minister, good evening. Our guest speaker, Professor Plo Lumumba, good evening and welcome to Zambia. Somebody just mentioned my political name, which I haven't heard for a while. Anjenja. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my singular honor and privilege to give a vote of thanks this evening. It's very difficult to talk after an eloquent speaker such as Professor Lumumba. So I'll be brief so that you don't compare us. I would like to thank, first of all, the organizers of this event, Eden University. Thank you very much. We just came out of an election which was quite difficult, and we are in the new dawn government. And for us to have an eloquent speaker, as I said as before, in Professor Lumumba, I think it will help us to achieve what we want to achieve. So let's give a round of applause to ourselves and to the organizers, as well as to Professor Lumumba for that very wonderful discussion. I noted while we were sitting there that we have come from this lecture with the question, what is democracy? I think we all will go away scratching our heads and asking whether we in Zambia have a homegrown democracy, whether we in Africa have a homegrown democracy. Should we start to look at democracy in a different light? And I think that is something that we should all go away with. Is it about political parties? Is it about the people? Is it about finding a way of being harmonious as Zambians, as Africans? I think let's all go away with that. And definitely we must thank Professor Lumumba for putting that seed, that thought in our minds. Are we truly independent as the continent of Africa? I think that is something else we must go away and ask ourselves. There is also the concept of conflict. Is there a universal definition to what conflict is? We must go away and think about these things. Certainly as Zambia, we have come from a difficult recent past where we have seen political intolerance, where you come from became an issue. Is that our own definition of conflict? And how do we resolve it? How do we make sure that we don't go back there? That's another question for all of us. And all of these are points that have been made by our guest speaker, who I thank once again for that enlightening discussion. If I had the opportunity, I would have offered you citizenship. So, I made the pledge this night that I will speak to my colleague, the Minister of Home Affairs, and ask that you become Zambian. Perhaps we will be able to answer some of these questions. Also, I would like us to go away with the question that was asked. When you become a cabinet minister, do you become an instant millionaire? I think the answer in the New Dawn government is no. We want to be the epitome of servant leadership. And so, in giving this vote of thanks, I will ask all of you, the citizenry of Zambia, to hold us accountable, to make sure that that norm is no longer one, to make sure that we are indeed servant leaders. Like President Hakainde Hichilema has made it clear, so it must be for us who serve in the public office, in public offices of one sort or the other. So with those few words, I would like to again reiterate my thanks. Professor Seba, thank you very much with your team for organizing this event. And one and all, for being here and listening to these very important words and showing us a path where we should go as Zambia, given the new dawn, given the hope that we all have, the expectation that is sitting on our shoulders. Let us give ourselves another round of applause. Thank you very much. Thank you.
We can do better than that. Honorable Minister, with that lovely vote of thanks, I think it's safe to say it is a new dawn indeed. Do we agree? Thank you. So we've now come to the end of our program. I would like to thank each and every one of you for coming, and also like to thank the viewers at home for tuning in. The VVIPs and the VIPs, we have refreshments and snacks for you in the refreshment room. We have ushers that are going to direct you. As we end the program, everyone should be upstanding as we allow the high tables to leave first. Shall we all stand for the national anthem?
Stand and sing, O Zambia, proud and free, land of work and joy in unity, victors in the struggle for the right. We've won freedom's fight, oh, and strong and free. Africa is our own motherland, fashioned with and blessed by God's good hand. Let us all our people join as one, fathers under the sun, oh, one, strong and free. One land and one nation is our cry. Dignity and peace need Zambia's size, like a noble eagle in its flight. Zambia, praise to thee, oh, one, strong and free. Praise be to God. Bless our great nation. Free men we stand under the flag of our land, Zambia, praise to thee, oh, one, strong and free. Shall we pray?
Eternal Father, we thank you for the insights and wisdom we have shared today. Give us a vision, our Heavenly Father, to uphold your righteousness in everything we do from this day. As we travel back to our various homes, we seek the presence of the Holy Ghost, that Lord, you may escort us. We thank you for the presence of Professor Lumumba. Bless his family and bless his ministry. We pray for everyone else who is here. Bless each one of them. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Shall we be upstanding as our guest of honor, the guest speaker, and the VIP tables?